he bought a rope, and he bought a rope. Then I'm told he used to take some Tusker. So I think he also bought some too. I think he took. To cut the long story short, Dad, I never saw my dad again because he went and ended his life.
Hi guys, welcome back to today's episode. My name is Murugi Ndwiga. The month of November is International Men's Day. This year's theme is Zero Male Suicide. Today we are joined by a mental health advocate who will take us through her experience in this industry because she has learned and she has gone through the experience herself. Karibu sana. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Pauline Wanjiku. I'm a 50-year-old single mother of 2 amazing kids. I have a young adult and in university, and a girl who is turning 16 in November. I'm an accountant by profession, work in the corporate world, and besides being an accountant, I am a mental health advocate. I'm very vocal on that. Especially by the time I had said to myself, by the time I'm turning 50, I will get out and talk about how to get this message on mental health advocacy, creating mental health awareness, because even when you look at the statistics, our men are in trouble. The boy child is in trouble. The suicide rates in men has gone high day by day, and I just felt I cannot sit back any longer, knowing that I've been directly and indirectly affected by this suicide monster. Yes.
And when you talk about suicide, you have experienced it. Now take us back to where it all began. Where were you born, your family set up? Introduce us to your family.
Okay, thank you, Murugi. I was born in Cairo, Egypt in 1973. You will wonder, you will ask, how were you born there? My dad back then worked in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Kenyan government. That was in the late 70s, 80s. And apparently by the time he was taking his assignment in Egypt, my mom was carrying me, and that's how I ended up being born there. And we stayed there for like 7 years. Life was good, Murugi. Life was good. I'm told I had like 3 Egyptian nannies taking care of me.
Wow.
And that was our lifestyle.
How many kids were you?
We were 3. I have my elder brother and I'm the middle child, and my younger sister who has called Anne. So we were 3 of us. Unfortunately, my brother is no longer with us. I lost him in 2019. So yeah, that is how it was. Fast forward, he had different assignments. I remember from Cairo we went to Congo, Kinshasa. Then we went to the assignment, the one that I remember because now I was a 9-year-old girl, almost turning 10, was in the States. Actually, we stayed in New York, Manhattan City.
You're living the life, huh? Back in the day.
From year 1 to year 9, Murugi, my goodness, life was good.
Is your mom working at this point?
No. My mom was not working. She was basically accompanying Dad everywhere he went. And apparently my dad believed in his children being brought up by mom. So actually, yes, she had helpers, but he felt she needed to be a home mommy taking care of us. So In the States, yes, we went. And I remember when we went to the States, for the first 3 months, it was turning my, I spoke a lot of Arabic, I'm told. So when we came to the States, I had to enroll in class for the English to be refined to I'm told those years I used to speak the, the American English and stuff. Life was good, Murugi. And little did I know that earlier on in my dad's life, he had been diagnosed with clinical depression. And that was
at what age was he?
I was told in his 20s. In his 20s, 23, 24. And I'm told one of the reasons was probably the first appointment as a young man, he was posted to Russia. And he didn't know the language and all that. That's what I'm told. So he ended up, okay, he was a quiet guy. Okay, he didn't have people to interact with. And he turned into just drinking, yeah. So I think the loneliness back then drove him into depression. So
sorry to cut you short.
Yes.
He was diagnosed when he went to Russia.
He was diagnosed when he came back, because he came back on medical grounds.
So he had been in Russia for how long?
6 months.
Yes. So in the span of 6 months, that's when the setting is different. He's lonely. He gets into depression.
Yes.
Window of 6 months, he gets back to Kenya under medical grounds.
Yeah. Went back to Kenya. I'm told he went to, back then, Mathare. He was treated and he became okay. But he had to be on a depression medicine from then. He was told he cannot stay without that medication. He needed it for the rest of his life. Now we are talking about year 25 towards now 30. Which he did, and he had no episode at all until now, when we're in the States. In America, we are all of us now. We are 3 children. He's married. We are 3 children. Something happened at work, as I'm told. He was supposed to take up an assignment to go to France. I'm actually told schools were sought. A home was sought. But for some reason, he had stopped taking, remember I told you he was supposed to be on medication? He had stopped taking his medication because he assumed, it's over 10 years, I'm okay. You know the way sometimes we just assume? So he got into a relapse.
How old was he at this point?
I think the dad should have been around, he must have been in his 38, 39. 38, 39. When he got into a relapse. And you see, a relapse in terms of when he missed that promotion, remember he's not taking his meds, he went down. And as it's told to me, one day my mom just realized, we used to live in Manhattan in a storied building that I think had like 70 stories. So like one of the days, she found him on the balcony trying to jump. Then mom noticed, this is not right. This is something wrong. So he was taken ill, only to check and realize he's really gone, deteriorated into the depression. So because back then there was, the president back then was going to France, they had to set up the France office because he was a communications officer. So because of him being in hospital, because he was hospitalized for I think a month before he could get well, they had to get someone else. So this really brought Dad down. And then after hospital, for some reason, he could not continue in the embassy in the States, in New York, so he had to come back to Nairobi. That didn't go well with Dad.
Still now on medical grounds again.
Yes. He's lost his opportunity to France. He's now come back to Nairobi. Now I remember we now had to be sought schools. We used to stay in Isili. I remember Isili, and a school that was called Ainsworth Street Primary School. I don't know whether it's still there. So we went there. Uh, all my growing up, I never had my dad raise his voice to my mom. But when we came back, strange things started happening. I could hear some quarrels. I would hear loud voices, you know, and I would go peep in the bedroom door and hear they are really quarreling, or like there was something that was making them argue out. So that life, after a short time, okay, I was daddy's favorite girl. I was daddy's girl. You know how in our culture, I was named the mother. And conversations with dad was his laps. He was that kind of a guy who had also adapted the American culture. You must kiss, peck your kids before they sleep, tuck them in. Nini. That was our life.
He was a present dad?
He was a present dad. We could never sleep before he hugs us good night and tucks us in. And when we came back to Kenya, things started changing.
At this point, now that you've come back to Kenya,
Yes.
is he still working? Has he been taken to another office in Nairobi, or what's the situation like?
He's still working in the Nairobi office. He now he has to go through his clinics for the mental health challenge. He also developed some diabetes. So he had apparently I'm told he had like 3 specialist doctors because of the health conditions that he started getting. So
How old is he at this point?
Dad must have just turned 40.
Okay.
Just turned 40 or about to get to 40. It didn't take long before things started falling apart. Murugi, he used to drop us in school, and mom had felt she needed to also now start doing something. So he dropped us in school, dropped my mom at her place of shorthand something course, then he would go to work. There's this day I remember, Murugi. Dad was dropping us in school. I was just about to drop us. So there we are. And like it was always the case, I would tell Dad, and kindly give me money for sweets, money for snacks. For the first time, he raised his voice at me. I don't have money. Didn't have Besha. I still remember. I didn't know Kikuyu, but I still remember. It was the first time he ever raised his voice on me.
How old were you then?
I was 9. And I went to, he dropped us. When he dropped us in school, it used to be culture. Nikitoka, nenda na muhag. You know, I hug him. He gets out of the car, I hug him. Then now he wishes us a good day, pecks us. You'd either peck me here or here. And then we go to class. So this specific day, he asked me, he comes out like usual. See, he raised his voice at me. He told me, Shiko, come. I refused. See, I'm mad. Now I'm mad. He shouted at me. So I just left him with his hands open. I'm told that day he dropped us. He dropped my mother. But he could hint. Now my mother tells me many years later. And Shianashiakwa, my kids, take care of my kids.
He used to hint that a number of
Yes.
times.
And that day he kept, Paka Mame, like, what is this you're talking about? Then he would say, and my daughter, Wanjiku, take care of her. And I was like, why are you saying these things? So daddy, he dropped mom. He went, he didn't report to work. He went to the market. He bought a rope. And he bought a rope. Then I'm told he He used to take some Tusker. So I think he also bought some too. I think he took. To cut the long story short, Dad, I never saw my dad again because he went and ended his life.
Where exactly?
He in Kenya, in the house.
In the house that you used to live in. All right.
Yeah. So fast forward that day, we are picked. He didn't pick us like usual. We are being picked by an uncle. We are asking, hey, where is Daddy? See, already now, I've stayed the whole day. I've missed my hug. I'm like, oh, I remember we are told Daddy's in hospital. So we don't go home. We go to my uncle's place. Following day is when now we are told Daddy alikuwa mgonjwa na ameenda heaven. Fast forward, people have started coming. There's a lot of emptiness. There's all that. We bury him. Back then in the ministry, if your spouse, you lose your spouse, they give your spouse that, okay, like what they did, they gave Mom a job in the ministry, which she worked for several months, but she could not cope. My big brother is 12 years. I am 9. My small sister is 4 years. She's in Nairobi. She's alone. She's not been able to work because, by the way, hajazoea life ya kuhustle. Life ya mother ilikuwa soft life kinda.
She doesn't know this dynamics of working.
This story working, and actually it's my dad alikuwa anasema, you don't work. And she used to be paid an allowance every month. Yeah? So my mom, she could not cope with Nairobi life. And she made a decision for us to go to our home village in Kirinyaga.
After how many months of Dad passing away?
I think about 5. 5 or so.
So now your dad has passed away.
Yes.
And the dynamics at home are changing. In terms of grief and coping, how are you coping as a family? From your mom, your brother, your sister, how are people handling the loss of your dad? What are you seeing?
As usual for I as the girl, I cried a lot. My brother, yes, he cried, and at some point alishikwa akienda kwa main road kugongwa na gari. I remember I was told that. It was not
how
easy.
old was he?
My brother was 12.
So immediately after that's what he tried to do that?
Yes, he tried to do that. And
what are you going through? How are you coping?
A lot of emptiness, a lot of void, loss of purpose, loss of direction. Yani kulose to life. Yani we were lost. For Mom, I'm yet now to now begin to see the kind of person she became when we moved to Kirinyaga. We are moving to Kirinyaga. Yes, my dad had started a permanent house, but it was not finished. So we had to, with the little savings Mom had, she made a wooden house of 3 rooms. You know the way this room is na katikati in your sitting room, then the pit latrine is outside and the bathroom. So you can imagine Pauline. I will not talk much of my young sister who was 4 because she didn't know much. My brother and I, we are moving from flushing toilets, running water, good life, to there was no water back then. There was no electricity. The latrines are outside. I used to really get stressed when I'm told now it's time for me to go to the latrine, which is outside. Just picture that, from flushing a toilet to the latrine outside. It was horrifying.
And sorry to take you back. After your dad died, was there any compensation from the ministry? Any money to keep you going? Nothing was given?
No.
I know behind the scenes you spoke about because of the nature of your father's death, nothing came to the family.
Nothing. And that is something I really would want to fight for, because a mental health disease is just like any other disease. If you can compensate someone who dies through diabetes, why not somebody through mental health? Anyway, we got nothing, so we had to start from down. So murugi, I was used to English breakfast. I was used to juice, sausage, bacon. I was spoiled for choice. Now I'm going to Kirinyaga. The best my mom could afford is a cup of porridge without sugar. And there I am. One thing, I'm just told, Dad is no more. Sasa hii ndio maisha yetu. Sasa, this is how we are going to be living. I was the vocal one. I would question mom. I'm given the uji. You know, in the American culture, I've already been, you speak for yourself, you stand for yourself. So I ask, I cannot take this thing, yak. Nachapwa. I remember at that age, I questioned my mom, why are we so poor? She beat me. I understand. Now I understand that I made her grief very hard. Because I was asking questions right, left, center. Sometimes I refused to eat because if it is not porridge, it is bananas that have been boiled. Wow. And I'm used to buffet.
And you're wondering, what is all this?
What is all this? Now I realize I made her grieving very hard because over the years, she would, because I asked her, because I also had a very difficult relationship with her. And when I got older, I wondered why I was beaten more than the rest, I also felt like she didn't love me per se, only to realize it's just that I was too, upfront with my questions. Where did Daddy's money go? Why did Daddy die? At some point, I'm like, God took her. Kwani, how bad is God? That is also something I would want to say when we're telling young kids, stop telling them God took them. It makes them hard for them to love this God because he looks like a monster. Anyway.
So at what point did you learn what had happened to your father?
You see, okay, 9 years now, you remember it was 9 when I was 9 years now. I'm now approaching teenage. My teenage life was very difficult with my mom. First of all, I had so many unresolved questions. She never told me the real cause of my father's death. Now, I'm going to be revealed to one time, I not even knowing that my dad died by suicide. When I was in class 5, there were so many meds in the house. And my relationship with my mom was not good. I felt I needed to die. So I remember one time taking a lot of,
Whose meds were they?
My dad's. They were not disposed of. And it's my big brother who stopped me. Life was so hard. I could not understand. I was so anxious. Now I know it was money, anxiety, financial, because I could not understand. How can you live from maisha ya ndege munakuja maisha? My mom used to have her car. My dad used to have his car. Now I'm walking. I could not understand. Now I never walked without shoes, but to cope in the nearest village school, I had to walk without shoes. Back then, we used to go home for lunch. So I could not understand, why am I walking without shoes? Then in school, I'm just speaking the American English. Nazungukiwa na watoto hivi. We're wondering, what is this one saying? I suffered loneliness, I suffered bullying, I suffered many things. So I just wanted to die. Fast forward, I was still very a bright girl. So me, I've gone to high school. I was in a school called Giriambu Girls. When I was in Form 3, third term, going to Form 4, is when my mom told me how my dad died. And
So this whole time, from the time you're 9 years, you just know that your father was sick, just that?
Just that. But even without knowing, I was just a troubled teenager. I was a troubled girl. I hated myself.
What of your brother and your sister? Are they as troublesome as you are?
No. My brother is kind of okay. or so I thought. I'm the troubled one. And I used to get into trouble a lot with my mother.
And at this point, how is your mom behaving? How is she grieving? Now looking back, maybe at that point you didn't know, but now looking back, how was she grieving?
She was devastated. She faced rejection from friends. Those friends who, my mom used to host parties. Everyone left. Everyone left. Just one or two relatives who stuck with her. Now, because the money has gone, even those who used to check on us, none checked on us. That must have been having a very difficult time for her. Some relatives gave her a hard time. So it was a difficult moment for her. And the worst I could do for me is to make it even worse. So she breaks it when I'm going to Form 4. Form 4 yangu yote sikusoma. I could not imagine. How could he say he loves me and he did
that?
Why did he give up? Does he have an idea what I've gone through since he left? You know, if you'd ask the class of 1991, they know me as a girl who just used to cry. And they never used to know why. So for me, it became very difficult. I remember, so that's why I always advocate for counselling. Even though small kids don't assume they don't know anything, because this will manifest in my adulthood. Well, I did my exams, I got what I got, and I left.
So now, you've told your dad has passed away. You're dealing with your dad's loss. And then in Form 4, just when you're getting to Form 4, you learn your dad died by suicide. How are you coping? How are you handling all this information? What are you doing to cope with this?
Cry a lot, hate on God, hate on him. Yeah, I started hating my dad even in the grave because I could not understand. Do you know what I'm going through because of your decision? Or that is what that's what I felt.
Are you getting any consolation from your mom?
No.
It was not a safe space or an open space for you to go to her? What was happening with you and her and the relationship?
I think she just had too much. So not having a way to speak out what I'm going through, it made me have very low self-esteem, very low confidence. It affected Pauline as a person. And here I am, I've turned 19. I'm now trying to look for love in the wrong places. There's no love at home. My dad, the one who loved me, is no more. And wow, there are things that didn't go very well with me. So
what are those things, if you could share with us? What happened after 19 years?
First and foremost, I think I used to be very hard on Mother in terms of questions. You remember, I kept asking. At some point, I probably asked her whether she was the cause. I also, when I was 19, I stayed home for 3 years. I come from a region where coffee is the main cash crop, and I stayed home. My mom, for some reason, was not able to take me to college. And I remember asking her one of the days, Mom, why are you not taking me to college?
How had you
What do you
performed
think about me?
How had you performed in your exams?
I got a C. And they had told me with some uncles to repeat, but I refused. So for that reason, then I was told, then you will stay home. I stayed home for 3 years until from 1991, 92, 93, 94 is when I asked her, Mom, I want to go to college. Why are you not taking me to college? Don't you think about me? That one landed me in trouble. Nilichapwa. She really beat me.
And at this point, she's still taking out her frustration on you?
Yeah, sort of. That's the second time I attempted suicide.
At what state were you in both times for you to want to really attempt suicide?
It's just one thing, people don't just decide to end their lives. It starts with something, you know. Now that I've read, I know. I was suffering from severe anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder. That's the name of that monster I was going through. And the rest didn't have, my siblings didn't have. That is why it was very hard for me to cope and accept, because there was no counseling, there was no safe space there was no support. That is why, right? And fortunately, my life didn't end then. And suicide is not something, now I understand it more. And well, I went to college, I chose a career, and
so your mom finally took you to college, or who took you to college?
She finally took me to college. And back then, it's not like now we have career guidance, nini. I just was like, what can make me get out of this poverty and go back to that life? So money. I was like, money. I must do a career in money, because for me back then, being an accountant
equals money, and a lot of it for that matter.
Oh,
now
my
you know
goodness.
better.
Oh my goodness, now I know better. But anyway, I chose the career. You know, God is so merciful, Murugi. Yeah, I chose that.
So where did you go to school?
I went to a college now it is Kimathi University in Nyeri. That's where I studied my accounting course. We used to start with something called KATC. What is it? Accounting, Kenya Accounting Technician Certificate. That's where I started. Life was still not okay, but I managed. And if there's a place I never wanted to be, is home. So I found my way in life. I did my CPS. I got my first job when I was 20. I think I was 23 or something. I was a bookkeeper in the Catholic Diocese of Muranga. And one of the Mzungu's missionaries noticed something in me. This girl is bright. And they were computerizing the system back then. So I was picked to be trained. That is how I landed my job in the diocese. And I stayed there for like 4 or 5 years. And bado maisha inanipiga character development. And I'm still looking for daddy.
So have you left home? Are you living on by yourself?
I'm living by myself. I'm living
Pesa imeanza kukuja ama bado?
Pesa zinakuja. Yes. And what a relief, okay, for me back then. But still remember, I have so many baggages, emotional baggages zimejaa hivi. Yeah? So I'm trying to look for love in different places. So unajua tu watu vile anakwanga, some people will take advantage of you, nini. I've gone through all that. And fast forward, I was able to do the basics of KTC. I did CPA section 1 back then, and I decided aka kafilin ka pesa ni kazuri sana. I could not continue. I looked for another job. That is how I landed in the job that I am today. Currently. I started a job as a reliever, casual. Yeah, but there was always this thing in me that I was in charge of making my life get better. So nikasoma. Hiyo pesa ya casual, nikasoma. To cut the long story short, I finished my CPAK. I joined the association, ISPAC association. I joined the Association of Women Accountants, and my career went up there. However, when I was in when I got this job in the company that I'm working in today. I've worked in that company for now 23 years. I think solution ya kumaliza hii loneliness na avoid ni kuolewa. So I meet a guy. First I used to have a guy who was outside the country. Tulikuwa tunaongea na phone. He promised me marriage. It looked, yeah. Those days there were no cell phones. He would write to me a letter and tell me, kwa ile booth, ugoje siku fulani saa fulani, I'll call. That's how we operated.
You go and stand there for several
I go
hours,
stand there.
waiting for your call. Your love life was hard.
Oh my God. Sometimes I tell my kids some of these stories, they're like, huh? Anyway, so when he could not come because the way he went to that country, his papers were not okay, I said, di mapenzi ya simu, nimemaliza. The next guy who looks like he can be a good husband, I'll get married. And I got married.
How old were you?
I was 29.
So you're still trying to fill a void.
Yeah.
Still trying to look for your father.
Still trying to look for a father figure. Trying to look for someone who will love me for real, because me sija feel love tena nini.
At this point, how is your relationship with your mom?
Si
At
mbaya.
29.
Okay, it's not bad. I would do a lot of gifts to her. Try to, just make her happy and all that. But I still could feel like I'm the black sheep. Until one of the times, but I'll let you know. And okay, when I got married, I got married to somebody I did not know. Between the day of knowing him for the first time and the day I did a wedding was 6 months. And I got married to him because, unfortunately...
What did he give you that you thought this deserves marriage?
He looked a quiet guy.
Like your father. Your father was quiet.
He looked quiet. I thought a good husband ni yule anakaa mkul. Oh my goodness. We barely knew each other. Before I could know what's, I am here, I'm pregnant. My mom used to threaten, no single mothers in this home. You must leave this home with a wedding. Honestly speaking, I got married with the fear and that notion that I must get married. Na yeye pia ameniweka ball. Babake amemwambia, umeweka msichana, you must marry her. So here are two people who don't know each other, been forced into this marriage.
So you started your marriage?
It didn't work.
After how long?
9 years. I had tried. It didn't work. Then now...
So by this time you have how many children?
2.
Okay.
The still ones I have today. It didn't work. When my son was 2 years, the depression really came. Baya. And that's the 3rd time I would even think suicide.
So were you dealing with postpartum depression?
I had postpartum depression. Plus a marriage that was bad, toxic. Not physically abusive, but emotionally abusive. Financially abusive, because I was a casual in the company. I didn't have money. So yes, but I didn't. And I remember my mom came to see me. Now we are friends with my mom. She once came to see me after marriage, and she found me in a very bad state. And she asked me what is wrong. And I'm like, things are happening. She actually wept. She told me, please tell me. So I told her. She told me, she took me for counselling.
She took you for counselling?
Yes.
She didn't tell you to leave?
No.
Stick it out?
Yeah. She told me, let's try counselling. So we went for counselling. I'll never forget that counselor. If today I could find him, I would really laugh. She brought me to Nairobi. The counselor was like, you are an intelligent girl. Go back to school. Kwa sahi nimefanya CPA, nimefikisha halfway. Sasa nimetaka kuolewa. I'm giving my everything to the marriage. It is not working. He told me, go back to school. Go back to school. That marriage added into my depression. And my confidence was at 0, nil, nini, everything was at nil. There's one thing I'll never forget, and that is a wake-up call for me, why I decided to walk out of that marriage. One of the Sundays, now my son, who is now 20, approaching 21, we would go to church with him, with my son and my daughter. My daughter was months old. So, kumbe nimewekelea food. So, you know, small babies eat mashed food, eh? Nimesahau tunaenda church. Nikaacha food na nikafunga na tukaenda church. When we are almost at the door, that was in Nyeri back then, nikasema, guy, gas niliacha food. And when I could look, it was like an hour. Na unaona the way.
Uliacha kwa moto?
Niliacha kwa moto. I used to live in flats. My son, he just said, Mom, lete funguo. He grabbed the food. Akakimbia.
1 hour later?
Yes, akakimbia home. Sasa mimi nalia tu, nikapigia neighbor, nikamwambia, because now he's young, he's 5 years. How will he even know what to do in that kitchen? So nikapigia neighbor, nikamwambia, I think my house is burning. Please, I've given my son the key because sasa siwezi kimbia because of my kid. Wacha afungue unisaidie kuzima hiyo moto. They found the sufuria red. Almost now chomaring the service that was wooden. Wow.
And that was the turning point for you.
That is the time I realized I'll either kill my children bila kujua, ama I said now I really need to do something. And I started planning my exit. You know how our parents are. Vumilia, things will get better. This decision I made on my own. And I'm like, hapa sikai, I must move. So I na hiyo pesa kidogo, by then najisomesha na bado niko married.
And how long did it take you to live? From the point you made the decision?
3 years.
You took 3 years to live?
Imagine, I took 3 years.
So what are you doing these 3 years?
Kusoma, ensure at least nimekuwa financially okay.
So you're saving?
I'm saving, going back to school. I combined the CPAs with the degree. I did a degree in finance in Kemu. And when the time was right, I just made up my mind and left. So still sijaenda ile counseling thorough. You know, there's a thorough counseling that every person who has mental health challenges should go through. So sasa nimekuja, sasa hii ni phase ingine. Divorce comes with its own issues.
Yeah. How old are you at this point when you're leaving your husband?
I must have been about, I was about how old? Let's see, 15. This is my 11th year. I must have been 39 or something close to that. Because now this is my 12th year as a divorced lady.
So while you're dealing with all this, pursuing separation, divorce, your marriage is not working, what's happening with your mom, with your brother, with your sister?
They are all going about their lives. My sister was in Mombasa working, now she's working. My brother is in married and going on with his marriage, although troubled marriage. My mom is okay now. She's doing serious farming and doing well, because I remember when I decided to go back to school while I was still married, she really supported me. Actually, I attribute the degree I did in finance to my mother, and she became my cheerleader.
So she managed to financially pick herself up.
Yes. Years later, she picked herself up. She managed to finish that permanent house which she lives in till today. She's actually, she was okay because part of the money of helping me finish my CPAs and the first degree, now I got my promotion and got my money, she's the one who supported me. She supported me while I was still married. Yeah. And
Your sister?
my sister is fine, working in Mombasa, and life now is good. Yeah, everyone at least has something that they are doing. Trouble struck again in 2019, Murugi. I know my brother had issues in drinking and all that, and without going into much details, for some reason, he died in 2019 of November. Actually, the 2nd of November. Murugi, that one, you see, I've not yet dealt with daddy and all this. When I lost my brother in 2019, I went into depression.
Had you seen any telltale signs of what's happening with your brother? Was he troubled? What was happening with him?
All I could see is a lot of drinking. And somebody I could not understand. Somebody I did not take time to know. Now that I know, he was depressed. When he passed on, I'm with my 2 kids. I'm lost. I'm really, when you get kids, things change. I'm thinking about my 2 children, but I'm like, hii maisha, kuna tu vile. So what happens is that a friend of mine tells me, no, Pauline, you must go for counselling. And I started counselling.
By the time you're starting counselling, what are you really going through? In what mental state are you in? Just draw a picture for us. What's actually happening in your life that is really bringing you down?
I want to die.
Because now of your brother, or now combined your brother and your father?
Combined. I'm tired of life. Nothing good can come out of my life.
Were you tight with your brother?
Not much. Because I felt like he's the one who took all the love. I felt like he was loved more. So
by your mom,
by my mom, yeah. So what? I'm lost, but I don't know who to leave my children with. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Nothing in life is making sense, Murugi. So I go for counseling. My counselor was called Sami. And I've done so many sessions, by the way. If I can say the hours of counseling I've done, I think I must have done like 50. But I thank God because I am here today. And I want to tell you about the impact of some of the things that happened that came out. One thing that came out is that I never grieved my dad. my brother has died. So I'm grieving my brother and I'm grieving my dad. The death of my brother has triggered the grieving of my dad, and I'm in what they call complicated grieving. So I'm taken through the process. Write a letter to your dad. Wow. Tell dad what you want him to know. Write a letter as though you want to tell daddy what you've gone through since that day about the hug. Let me tell you, and he warned me, this is not going to be easy. You should have seen me writing those letters.
Sorry to cut you short.
Yes.
When your dad died, the day he passed away, you were mad at him because he did not hug you. After he passed away, was there a sense that you were blaming yourself for that? So that is part of what you were also dealing with.
The guilt. And the guilt would come out so much after my brother has died. Could I have been the reason? Because of not hugging me. Maybe if I hugged him, he would have thought, maybe I made him feel now he's hopeless. Even his own daughter doesn't love him. Let me tell you, I cried. I cried when writing those letters. Daddy, I'm sorry. Only to realize the counselor picked, I had a grudge towards my dad.
So in 2019, that's when you get into counseling. You're dealing with your father's loss and your brother's loss. Please tell us, how are you dealing with this and what are you unpacking in these sessions?
Actually, it happened in 2019 November. So actually, counseling I'll start in 2020.
Okay.
The following year. Remember, the grieving is not only, grieving is also the loss of also the marriage.
Okay.
Grieving is not just the loss of loved ones through death, but even loss of a marriage. So I'm going through counseling for all those things. The loss of my dad.
That's a lot.
The loss of my brother, the loss of my marriage. And it is a lot, yes. And I got a very nice counselor, and we had to now start with my father and declare everything, And he told me, what are those most hurtful things for you that you want your dad to know if you are there? There were one key thing. Okay, actually two. I used to have very long hair. And when we moved to Kirinyaga, or when we were about to move, my mother cut my hair. It was very long to my back. And
but did she cut your hair?
She said she didn't have time to salon, and where we are going there are no salons. So all these years later, when writing that letter, Murugi, I really cried. Daddy, you remember my hair? Because my hair, Daddy used to take me to the salon. Imagine mom cut my hair. Can you imagine? And I'm like, the counselor knew what he was doing because I was able to bring out everything that I held against my mother. Because even he was saying, tell your father what your mother has done in his absence.
Say everything on the letter.
On the letter. So we would go read the letter, cry, do a session, then we burn it together. Burn it together, and for sure.
How did that make you feel?
It made me feel good. So we handled my dad's issues. Then now we came to see, we had to follow sequentially. Dealt with the marriage. Then now we came to my brother's issue. By the time I was done, and then he realized that I needed psychiatry help. We know when people are battling mental health challenges, it's important for someone to see a psychiatrist also.
Why so?
So that they can know what type of depression is this, and know what drugs to administer, what medicine to administer. So mine was post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety, high anxieties. So he told me.
So by the time you're going for counseling, you are not on drugs?
I was not.
Okay.
Never ever.
But the counselor so it fit to put you on drugs?
Put me on
after
drugs.
seeing the psychiatrist.
Yeah,
okay.
and also seeing the history in the family. So I started taking the drugs, so it would be interchange. You see a psychiatrist, you see a psychologist, you see a psychiatrist, you see a counselor for psychotherapy to be helped to cope. Now, within this time, I become a born again. And now this, you cannot underestimate the power of that spiritual life. Yeah. So after a short time, 2020, I became well, and I went off the drugs.
After how long?
About a year. About a year or so. And was just left with the counseling bit. And which brought me up to now where I am today. I'm well, I'm okay, and I just want now to, whatever I'm doing, just try to, it didn't have to be 30 years plus. If I had been taken for counseling early enough, I'd been helped to cope with the grief. Yeah. Grieving is something that is, if not handled well, can put people in a lot of trouble, Murugi. And it doesn't have to be that way. And especially grieving as a result of sudden deaths. What am I calling a sudden death? A suicide or an accident? You see, those ones are, not that any death is okay, but you see there are deaths of a terminal illness. Slowly, the family, you are prepared for, you know, you get my point, eh? But sudden deaths, please don't. People should never assume. Even that young kid, it took me years to get out the picture I saw of my dad lying in his coffin. And now fast forwarding it now and reliving all this, I'm like, I had to be taken through very hard lessons of also letting go of dad. I remember the very last session, I was given an empty seat. Nikambiwa, assume that's your father.
Talk to him.
Talk to him. I asked Sami, the counselor, what do you mean? Yeah. So I told Dad, my life has been very difficult. I forgive you for what you did because you didn't know. But you know what, Dad? You made your decision. I'm not going to follow you. Yani niliongea. I brought it out. Then the last very assignment was to go to my dad's grave. Take flowers. Nisha mwambia everything, that empty seat, yeah? I'm not going to stop living because you did what you did, right? I forgive you. You are sick. You are not well. But now I have to move on, Dad. Yeah? I have turned out to how I miss you in my graduations. Dad, do you know how many graduations I've had? And I was like, thank God there was nobody around. Unakaanga kama unaenda like my world ingine. Like, you know, but it really helped. That is the day I got my healing. When I was able to tell Dad, yes, this has gone on, this has gone on. But you know what, Dad? Now you have to leave me in terms of I totally disconnect from you, and I will only allow beautiful memories. And I will only speak about you in beautiful memories. Hii story ingine na mimi, I will not die by suicide. No. And you know what? I commit to self-love, Dad. Then the last one was going to his graveyard and just laying fresh bouquet of flowers. And that was it.
So Pauline,
Yes.
what would you advise women to do to support their men who are going through these mental health challenges?
First thing, Morogi, I would want to say it's important for women and every other person to understand where these mental health challenges normally come from. It is either finances, relationships, or an ailment or a disease, or whereby either person has an accident, is not able to use, is incapacitated in a way. But the major ones, finances, relationships.
Are the biggest that you're seeing.
And they interrelate. Relationship and finances, kuna vile. It's a causal effect to each other. As women, first we need to understand that men are only human and they have emotions, right? And let us not make them feel like less of men because of expressing the emotion. Let us hear them out without judging them. If you're a wife, husband, hear your man out. Offer a safe space without judging them. You know why they've closed up kabisa? It's because we judge them. And the worst thing you can do to a man is tell him, you're not man enough. You're not, you don't, a real man would have bought me a car. A real man would have taken me to Dubai. Other women, their men are taking them. You know, those things, they finish a man. Let us understand them and support them where we can. Yeah? I know some are not so good. Yeah, some of the men gender, they have really terrorized us as women. But just basically play your part as a woman and just make sure you give... you be that safe space a person can turn to work things out together, right? If a relationship is not working per se, I'm not an advocate of people divorcing, but people need to work on their marriages, stay married. But if it gets to levels whereby it becomes toxic, yeah, and what's something I call like black flags. You know what black flag is? You know, people think it's only red flags. There are many.
Black flags?
There are black flags, yellow flags, green flags.
I've heard of green flags, I've heard of red flags. What are black flags?
Black flags, when a man starts becoming violent, he starts slapping you. That's a black flag. In terms of...
Why not a red flag?
It's not.
Why black?
Black because there's no negotiation in terms of, oh, I didn't mean it. The one who starts with a slap will end with killing you. It starts from somewhere. Black because if you're in a relationship, somebody beats you, you need to end that relationship. It's black flag because there's no room for negotiation.
Okay.
I would also tell women to look out for signs. And let me tell you, not only for the husbands, sons, even for the younger ones. Did you hear a boy who died by suicide 2 weeks ago? 12 years, he was young. Watch out for your... Look at the signs. Your kid was active playing with the others. They've all of a sudden don't want to play with children. Don't be okay. Ask yourself why. They're either oversleeping or not sleeping at all, overeating or not eating at all. Somebody was okay. As in, one other way is of knowing that somebody is battling some issue of mental health challenges. Mse alikuanga smart, very smart. But of a sudden sense of grooming imeenda. They wearing cold clothes, they wear naye haoni, yani sense ya imeenda, meaning hata huku ndani ana feel empty, ana feel there's so many things to look out. So as women, let us look out for how any slight change of character even in our children. Another reason, this has not happened much in Kenya, but in outside the country you find so many kids have died by suicide because of bullying. Have conversations with their children. How are they being treated in school by the teachers and the fellow students? Get to know. and get to have conversations with them. Let counseling be a normal thing. Let's normalize counseling. At every level, even sometimes as a parent, even if nothing is happening, get to know the mind of your kid. Get to know your mind. When we are open to conversations without judging, we'll be able to bring this down or totally eliminate it. There's a reason why the International Men's Day theme is zero male suicide.
Yeah.
It's international, meaning the statistics, by the way, for the men and the women, it's like ratio of 4 to 1. Yeah, so it has gone so up in men. Yeah, let us even the finance bit as a woman, just get to have open conversations. How much do you earn? How much can I bring in? Can we budget together? So that at least we make sure we don't get so much into debt or live a lifestyle that is not sustainable. I keep saying as a financial counselor too that let's live within our means or below our means, because you find some of the reasons, I've seen cases where a man dies by suicide and leaves a note, nimeshindwa kulipa madeni. As a woman, are you able to support your man on the side of finances? What can you do better? The two of you. Yeah. And then these men need to be open. Just because you are facing a financial hardship doesn't mean you have to be quiet. You know, tell your wife, this is what is happening. What can we do together? Yeah, and I think when we have those open discussions in the family and all that, it's going to change so many things, Murugi.
And speaking of open discussions in the family, looking back now and in retrospect of what happened those many years ago.
Yes.
What discussion, what narrative do you think would have changed the course of your father's departure? What kind of a conversation do you think would have happened in the home that would have changed, if at all, what happened to your father? I'm just saying this so that if we're in families, people are in families who are, things are not going so well, what discussions need to happen in these homes?
One thing, the discussions should be in the homes. In case of any matter, even when things are going well, there should be discussions. I know if we were sat down and told, okay, this is your dad has died and this is it, or if we were given a counselor to help us through, right? And to help us through, you know, in grieving, there are different stages of grieving, from acceptance now to reality and now healing, yeah? When you go through that, I know if I personally went through that, my life would probably have taken a different turn, because I stayed in denial stage, I stayed in bargaining stage, I stayed, you know, and those are the top, after shock, it's if that was, I had such a discussion when I was 10 years, 9 years, my life would have taken a different and also the whole family at large. So I really advocate for counseling and discussions in the house, and help people accept the reality, you know, realities of things. People lose jobs, right? Even my dad himself was supposed to have gone through counseling. Maybe things would have turned out better, right? That it was not the end of it. Just because he missed a post in one station, France, there was so much ahead. But for a person battling mental health, he has to literally be sat down and told and helped to cope with that. So if for sure there were safe spaces to speak out these things, things would have turned out way much better than they have. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Pauline, for coming to the show.
Yes.
And for being vulnerable enough with us to share your story.
Yes.
And I'm glad to see that you're making good of this situation, that now you're talking about mental health. And I hope it's a conversation that will continue, and we will normalize it.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes. Asante sana kwa kukuja.
Asante Murugi for having me. I don't take it for granted. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Karibu sana.
Yes.
I appreciate Pauline for coming to today's episode and giving us insights about mental health. I hope we can normalize this conversation starting from our homes. Until next time, please like, share, and subscribe.